Welcome back, gang. It's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com, and we're here with the Magic Nightblade Umbra build updated with some top-end Scathing Mage here to show you, talk about the Magic Nightblade and the Dark Brotherhood, what has changed, and specifically go in great detail on combat to keep you firing off that DPS. So if you're looking for Magic Nightblade information for the Dark Brotherhood, this is your spot. Let's get going. Okay, we're back at the Gold Coast here with Octavian, my high health Magic Nightblade, and we're going to do gear and skills together. And the reason is, we changed some skills around that probably seem nonsensical. Yeah, I said a big word. But actually it makes sense depending on the gear that we're wearing. So, in previous builds, it's pretty much the Nightblade meta to use Funnel Health and or Swallow Souls. Massive healing, doesn't cost very much, heals you and another ally. And that's been kind of the bread and butter for a very long time. Well, a lot of Nightblades have switched to this. Now it costs a lot more, which can be mitigated somewhat in a trial, especially if your group is running Elemental Drain, Siphoning Spirits, throwing Mystric Orbs, and so on. Now, why are we using Force Pulse over Funnel Health? Primarily due to Scathing Mage. Scathing Mage is a magic set that comes out of Imperial City Prison. Now, you look at it, you have tons of crit, and it's based on crit. 20% chance when causing critical damage to increase your spell damage by 504 for 6 seconds. Does not proc over damage over time effect. So we're going to kind of break this down. What does that mean and why is it powerful? So as you can see, this is a lot more spell damage than Julianos, but the main thing is you have to keep it proc and active to beat out Julianos and or Twiceborn Star. So it's not exactly easy to play this way, but it does produce more damage than those results. The gear is actually not easy to get, but it's a lot easier now that the boss's guarantee drops. Some of the traits suck, but at least you can get the 5-piece. So it took a while to get this. You want it all in Divines. Narayaneth, once again, 10% chance to cause damage over time, not damage over time effects, to proc a Lich Crystal. So why did we switch to Force Pulse? Well, if you look at it, it's basically 3 attacks in one. So Flame, Cold, Shock. That gives us a bonus to both Scathing Mage, because it's not a damage over time effect, and Narayaneth. Basically trying to keep those up more often. So you can see that 500 spell power. Now, you can still use Narayaneth and Twiceborn Star and get really, really good results. Especially if you're a newer player and want a little bit less magic-intensive build, I would switch out to Funnel Health. And if you can't get Scathing Mage, use Twiceborn Star. It's what I used until I got here and got the really uber gear. You're going to want the Munda Stone Thief and Shadow for Twiceborn Star. So for this, you obviously want max critical, right? And so we're sitting here on my dual wield. I have Precise dual wield and Precise Maelstrom Fire Staff. And there's a very specific reason for that. Mo quit, mo problems. Now, if you're playing with a Twiceborn Star build or a solo, Sharpened is a really good trait, but this is kind of more designed for Vetmaw, Trials, Warhone rotations, and kind of optimized DPS. So Precise is really good. Sharpen is good solo because, well, you don't have anyone applying all the debuffs to armor and spell resistance. Okay, so Divine Straits, Thief Munda Stone, we're using Force Pulse over Funnel Health because of these two sets. And the other abilities are kind of similar to what we used last time. We're going to double bar Inner Light, Major Sorcery, giving us that max magic. My flex spot here is Siphoning Attacks. Siphoning Attacks is almost a must-have for Magic Nightblades since magic abilities cost more during this patch. Apparently Zos doubled the cost on some of these abilities, so you really notice the magic sustained issues. One, if your team is not running those specific buffs I mentioned previously, or you're not maintaining this. It costs a little bit of magic, 15-second buff, but it's worth maintaining over and over. Now, if you're doing trash pulls, meaning just a bunch of mobs you need to kill to get to the boss, Proxy Det is still a strong choice. It got nerfed in the single target application, which is basically just using it over and over as a dot because of Thaumaturge change, which is damage over time effect. So it no longer scales on that. The way it scales up is a lot different. It scales maximum to 250, but you need a lot more mobs to make it viable. So ideally, not something we mandatorily have to put on our bar anymore, but we're going to switch it in and out depending on the situation to take advantage of Proxy Det's true purpose, which is AoE crush mode. Also on the back bar is kind of our kill bar. So you want to be assassinating things and finishing off targets here, and that's because of Soul Harvest. Soul Harvest 50 ultimate cost, but really the reason we're using it is 10 ultimate when you kill an enemy. So hypothetically, you're doing all of your AoE, all your execution, you know, when they're below 25% health on this bar, so you can get more ultimate, get more meteors, get more damage. So that's why we have Sap Essence, our basic AoE heal juggernaut ability that gives major sorcery here alongside of siphoning attacks. And the most important dot, quote unquote, that you can run, which is Twisting Path. So the Twisting Path is the bread and butter of maintaining your Scathing Mage. Now, if you look at Scathing Mage, it says 20% chance of causing critical damage, and creature spell damage does not proc over damage over time. However, for whatever reason, it procs off of Twisting Path. So let's show you this. Okay, so we got a Minotaur over here. So I'm going to show you my unbuffed stats, 2400 spell damage. We're going to apply Twisting Path. Don't hit me, sir. And Scathing Mage proc there, 2900. So you see that can proc off of Twisting Path, meaning it's our major source of damage, AoE single target besides elemental blockade, but more importantly, most importantly, 11.5 seconds to proc once every second that Scathing Mage, making the set more valuable than anything else. Ultimately, with practice, I still have a lot to learn with this build. I have not mastered it. I got a lot to learn because it's so many decisive, really timing-based things you have to prioritize. Do I cast Twisting Path first? Do I cast Siphoning Attacks? Do I use a Meteor? Do I just use my Soul Harvest over and over? A lot of things that just take a lot of time, a lot of practice, a lot of skill to get good at before you actually master it. And the main thing here is Twisting Path. Prioritize this dot over anything else because you want to see that Scathing Mage uptime more. 70% higher, 80% higher. Once you get 80-90%, that's when the set becomes optimal. Your DPS becomes amazing. And it's due to using the right Munda Stone Thief, maxing your crit out, getting all that divines, and really maintaining your dots, product number one. So Twisting Path. Now, Impale. Like we said earlier, we're going to be using this as an execute. Now, for those execute spammers out there, don't just use Impale without light attacking. If you look at the enchant changes, I've made a million videos on it this past couple of weeks, but look at this. Now it includes spell damage every 5 seconds. So that's roughly every 3 to 4 Impales you need to be light attacking. Also look at the flame damage. That is a lot as well. So don't want just an execute mode. Just sit there and execute. You really need to be light attacking because these things will increase your DPS big time. Looks small, but it's actually a lot. Now imagine Scathing Mage procced, Major Sorcery procced, Spell Power Cure procced, and this weapon. You're pushing 4,000. If you go to use Molag Kina, you can almost dip up in the 5,000 range if you change your Munda Stone. Spell damage, that is. So it's ridiculously strong. Soul Harvest. Okay, so we're going to show you a trick in the combat section to take the advantage of Soul Harvest off the bat of a fight. But essentially what you want to do is use this on your buff bar, on your back bar AoE to get ultimate. Now, optimally, if a fight is going to last 1 to 2 minutes, a boss fight, that's what it's all about, killing bosses. You want to use a shooting star at the start of the fight, and then you want to use a potion immediately after light attack, Soul Harvest. Because potion plus a shooting star, if there's one mob or two around, you'll immediately have enough to do Soul Harvest. You hit that, now look at that, 20% more damage for 6 seconds. You continue to use siphoning abilities like Siphoning Attacks here, which will get up more ultimate for you, and essentially you can maintain this here, this major massive damage buff pretty regular during a fight. So if it's 1 or 2 minutes, Meteor up the front, and then save the ultimate for this. Once you're around 50 ultimate or so, you really need to come back to your back bar, cast it, and go back to town. The damage increase is staggering. So you're going to get good at this just by knowing the fights. You know, if you're doing a Bloodspawn Parse, well, it's not going to last more than 2 minutes, so you should be using Soul Harvest. If you're doing a Vet Maw, well, it's going to last a lot longer than 2 minutes, and you're going to want to time your meteors for ad phases, so it comes with time. Like I said, I am way far from mastering this, which is exciting because you have a lot of room to improve. Our front bar is a destruction staff bar. Maelstrom, though you don't have to have Maelstrom, you can use a Crusher enchant on a normal one. You can use a spell power one and still get a lot of good results. And so, and that's another thing, is if you're playing solo or with a group that doesn't run specific buffs, you're probably better off in flame damage with a Crusher enchant. And that reduces spell damage as well. So try to switch that out depending on the group that you're playing. So this bar looks similar to most Nightblade bars. Inner Light, Cripple. Cripple can also proc that because it does damage up front and a damage over time effect. You want to do Merciless Resolve. That's going to give you your minor Berserk, increasing your damage by 8%. But more importantly, once every 20 seconds, you get the Spectral Bowl ability. Now you look at the tooltip, that's massive. So even if someone's running Combat Prayer in your group, as a Magic Nightblade, you really need to keep this up. And you're keeping it up for that specific damage ability. A couple tricks to this: it's a really slow and clunky buff when you cast it. So if you look at it, look how long this lasts. So some of the finer points to Magic Nightblade DPS is to realize that you need to recast this when a bar swap is appropriate. So let's say these buffs are both running down. So I got Twisting Pass 11.5. I got my Merciless over here. I would cast my Spectral Bow right about now. I would recast it and immediately bar swap to put up Twisting. So watch. See how much faster that is? So instead of sitting there just doing this, you do this. All I'm doing, like the previous Sork video here, is just clicking the button and then bar swap. So it's on my mouse here. Remember, time is damage. Time is damage. The faster you can get things off, the faster, more abilities you can use, the more damage you're going to do. And the finer points of this build than anyone else is just pure timing. Okay, so we explained Merciless Resolve, and then Force Pulse is really our single target spammable ability. Now, when you're getting used to this, you know, it's okay to swap in Funnel Health until you get used to the Magic Sustain, especially if you're having trouble keeping up siphoning attacks. Some of the members in your group aren't providing those buffs that we talked about earlier, or throwing Mystic Orbs, because look at the magic cost. Now, it's magic, not elemental, okay? So that's what's really important. You need to know if those buffs are running. So what buffs am I talking about? Force Siphon. One of the morphs gives you back magic every time you hit them. That's a Restoration Staff. Usually your healers run that. Usually your healers will also run Awaken to Elements. When doing elemental damage, staff attacks, or abilities, you get back resources. So if those two things are up and someone is constantly throwing you Undaunted Mystic Orbs, you can go ham with Force Pulse and do a lot more damage. Remember, 3 attacks in 1. More Orionith proccing, more Scathing Mage proccing, 500 spell damage over 300. It's fantastic. And then good old Blockade of Fire. It's still worth using regardless if you have the Maelstrom Staff. It's a massive amount of single target damage, AoE damage, though it does not proc Scathing. So your priority dots here, as weird as it sounds, is Twisting Path number 1, because it keeps your Scathing Mage proc. Number 2 is Cripple. You can proc it up front. Number 3 is Blockade of Fire. Now, that'll produce more damage than your Twisting Path, but your overall damage will skyrocket down if you don't keep Twisting Path up. Trust me, I have a lot to learn, and you gotta keep that proc rate up as best you can. Okay, Shooting Star, we know how to use this, but I'm going to show you a trick here in the combat section next where you can get a whole lot of burst to start, and that's using an Empowered Meteor. So if we go to Mage's Guild, Might of the Guild. Casting the Mage's Guild grants you Empower. Well, now that Inner Light isn't like toggleable, you can click it and grant Might of the Guild. So that Might of the Guild will make your initial meteor really, really juicy. And then, actually in the cast of Shooting Star itself, when it lands, it's going to give you another Empower, making your heavy attack and or light attack really, really charged. So the optimum way to start the fight, and believe me, it takes me a lot of times to get it right. Basically, you're going to keep your buffs up. Siphoning attacks, Merciless Resolve, and then you hit this, Empower, hit your Shooting Star, and then hold down a heavy attack. Why? Because that heavy attack will be empowered and almost be 24, 25k to start. And then it all lands at once. And when it all lands at once, boom, your stuff will shoot up. Once that's done, then you're going to cast Blockade, Cripple, Bar Swap, Twisting, Potion for that 20 ultimate, Soul Harvest, go into your rotation. I know, it's a lot to get down. I wish there was a testing dummy, Zos. Zos, if you're watching, bring the testing dummy back, because it takes a lot of practice to get this. I have a lot more to do. But just so you know, that's the optimum rotation to start. So let's go over it again. I'm going to show you live. So you're going to always buff first. So we're going to recharge that. Inner light. Fully charged heavy. Boom. We're clicking that meteor. Same time. Cripple. Bar swap. Potion. Bang. Soul harvest. And then go into rotation mode. Priorities. Twisting path. Cripple. Blockade. So you have a lot to keep track of, essentially 5 buffs. So if we were keeping track of it in priorities, twisting would be the most important. In terms of resource management, siphon, that's number 2. In terms of DPS, you would be looking at cripple. You'd be looking at this. So you have 5 things to keep track of. It's very, very hard. So if you're on consoles, here's kind of the way to do it since you don't have buff trackers. One, you can be really good and just know the timing of everything, but I would look at your character specifically and look at some key visuals. So 1, red hands, right? Red glowing stick. That is your major, minor berserk, your 8% damage. Ground is looking red. Plus you have a lot of movement speed while you're in here. That's twisting path. So the ground should be red, your hands should be red, and then you should also have fire on the ground. That should look like that all the time. And sometimes I don't even look at my buff tracker, I just look at the ground. Hands red, ground red, and fire. Now cripple is going to be a little bit more tricky because you're going to have major expedition from this as well. But usually when you know cripple's out is when you're starting to get slowed down. Okay? And then if you want to throw another buff on top of it, siphoning attacks, you got glowing red swords and red swords. Yeah, it's really hard. It takes a lot of practice, but the amount of damage that you can do is staggering. Not to mention you have awesome execute, you have good resource sustain, and you have range. So don't be afraid of trying this build. It's really, really good. You can always flex in things if you're struggling with resources or sustain or damage or surviving. So let's talk about that. If you're struggling surviving, you really need to switch back to Twiceborn Star setup, running the Thief and Shadow, and swap in here funnel health. That's going to help you and your team members. It's also going to be much easier to sustain. If you're looking for more AoE damage during trash bowls, you really need to put in Proxy Debt. If you're looking for even more survivability, check out Harness Magicka. Yes, the ward is 6 seconds, but it absorbs a lot of damage. And we've been doing Vet Maw and Vet Sanctum Ophidia now scaled up, and it's really, really helpful, especially with those last bosses, the 3rd boss in ESO. So those are some of the things that you can do to keep your survivability up and flex things in and out that fit you, your group, and your builds. We're going to talk about champion points here, and I know not everyone's at 501 CP, and I get a lot of comments on that. Essentially, you want to do the 92-75 split or 98 and the rest in here. So if you don't have max champion points, I would focus more on reduced cost and then sprinkle in some Arcanist. The passives aren't that critical, but one that really is Synergizer. Grants 2 ultimate anytime you activate a synergy while in combat. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but every time we cast a siphoning ability, we get ultimate. Every time we use a potion, we get ultimate. Every time we hit a synergy, we get ultimate. Not to mention every time we hit a synergy, if you're undaunted as max, look at this. We get tons of resources. So not only do you get 1,600 magic, but you get 2 ultimate to go with it. That's incredible. Now, if you're using necrotic orbs, you can basically hit a necrotic orb with undaunted metal, get ultimate, hit a potion at the same time, have a soul harvest up, and almost be at full magicka. That's where the mastery of the build comes in, which I have yet to do. Okay, also another thing is if you're at low CP, instead of going all out damage and relying on your teammates to run buffs for you, you really need to use 1 to 2 to even 3 magic recovery glyphs. If you don't want to re-enchant your glyphs, let's say you're running out of kudas and stuff, you can switch out from this food, max magic and health, to max health and magic recovery. Just realize you're giving up almost 5,000 magic. That's a lot of damage. Though if you run out of resources and you're doing nothing, It's better to do that than anything else. So my recommendation, if you're starting this build out, you're just reaching end game, is to do 1, maybe 2 glyphs of recovery till you get used to it, and start weaning off as you start getting more and more used to it, or switch to this food to save yourself some money. Back into the CP, so really focus on getting that Synergizer passive right away. Some of the other things in here aren't that useful, but you really want the Magician. That's really important. The most important damage component passive that you can get is Spell Precision, increasing your spell critical rating by 12%. So obviously that's a no-brainer. So your low CP, you really need to get 30 points into here. Arcane Well is also tremendously important, giving you a 20% chance when you kill an opponent to restore magic up to 3 allies in the area. So when everyone has this, a lot of magic is getting restored on the embodies. So make sure that you stick over there to 120. So I'm using Gil's champion point layout, 95 here, 15 in spell penetration, 30 in Elfborn, and usually it's a 20-20 split, roughly. But since we have a lot more crit, we can take a lot more advantage of the Elfborn passive. And then Thaumaturge. A little bit low on Thaumaturge, but it does do pretty good results. Okay, so in CP, you see I have a weird CP setup, and we got done running Vet Sanctum Ophidia this morning, and there's a specific fight here that is really reliant on shock damage. Now, we didn't beat it because the server came down, but this really helped my survivability. And so normally what I have, I'm going to respec this, is around 70 and 70. I don't know why I have any Bastion. Around 70 and 70 here in Hardying Elemental Defender. So I'm going to go ahead and take that. That's going to give me good magic. Now what was happening in this fight is it was specifically pretty much all shock damage. So some of it was poison, but mainly shock damage. It was also damage over time, so I respec the champion points. Now, it costs 3k gold to do this every time. But if you're really trying to push the top end content, you really need to think about coming back over here and analyzing, should I use this? I was using Harness Magicka, so I was going with the Bastion some more instead of Quick Recovery, off healing for the group. So constantly think, does the situation, if we keep on wiping, are we doing a fight in White Gold Tower that's just flame damage? Well, take out your points in Hardy, put them in all in Elemental Defender. Is there a dot like the Planar Inhibitor? Okay, let's go some more in Thick Skinned. Do I need just more self-healing? Okay, let's go in Quick Recovery. A lot of players will spec this stuff out, specifically your champion points and your skills. Before each and every boss fight, you need to ask yourself, are my skills optimal for this boss fight? Not the previous one, not the next one, but this one. Yes, it's a pain in the butt and going in here and respecking, but it sometimes is the difference between you and your group wiping. So make this a priority. Okay, we're going to take some time here to show you the optimum way to start a fight so you can get that big burst at the beginning. And notice that I'm constantly recasting my buffs, and I recommend doing that just before every fight to make sure you have the full duration. So I'm going to Siphon, get my Berserk up, Inner Light, and a boom, Meteor, and you see that big old heavy attack? Blockade, Cripple, Bar Swap. So I do a light attack, another light attack, then Potion, Soul Harvest is up, bang, I use it. So then I'm looking on the right hand side of my screen for the buffs and debuffs that are up. So right here I should switch, Impale, and that's kind of how you want to start a fight. You notice the boss right there was untargetable. So a good key thing that you want to do is tab target the boss. For whatever reason, sometimes the game, if the boss gets heavy attack and gets bashed back, it will be untargetable. So make sure you tab target a single boss if you're doing like a boss specific pull. Once again, we're going to buff up. So watch it here. Inner Light, empower my Meteor, fully charge that heavy attack. Bang, Blockade, Cripple, Bar Swap, light attack to proc the weapon, enchant damage, do a heavy attack again, Soul Harvest, and we're going, reapplying our buffs before execute phase, shoot off that Assassin's Will. As soon as you see that thing at 25%, Bar Swap, rip to grip. That's big time damage. Now we're going to do a half-speed Blood Bond Parse with Gil tanking for me. Give me guard so I don't die because we have no self-healing. So as you can see, I do the exact same maneuver here to get that big amount of damage burst, Cripple, and I'm light attacking in between. Twisting Path, light attack to proc my weapon enchants. I'm doing a heavy to proc both of them, soul harvest. Okay, now we're bar swapping back. Usually by this time, cripple's about to run out, so you're going to need to reapply that and then blockade. So the buff falls off, scathing mage is procced, got blockade up, but prioritize cripple over blockade, because remember that initial hit can proc that scathing. Also, another priority is twisting path. So as soon as that's about to reach the point in which it falls off, go to your back bar and reapply it. Don't wait for it to fall off to swap bars like I did. You see that? That 1 split second is the difference between scathing mage staying up 100% of the time and 70. Thus, a lot more spell damage. Also, I reapply my minor berserk. Get twisting path. That was an overcast. When I say overcast, what it means is the duration's not up. It's kind of useless to recast it sooner. So it's a lot of room for improvement. Keep going. Force pulse, cripple, blockade was out, so I should have done a blockade earlier before just another force pulse. Priorities are important. So now the boss is nearing that execute range, so I'm looking at my ultimate, looking if a potion's available, throw my twisting path down, but you notice cripple's not up. So I need to reapply that. Instead of doing a force pulse, I need to reapply cripple and blockade and then go into execute phase. So bar swap back. And bang. You notice the soul harvest is up, so hit that first. Go into soul harvest mode. Go to execute. You can see twisting path falls off right there. If it's just like 1 or 2 things and scathing mage is up, continue to execute or reapply it. Okay, so let's break down this parse and show you that I have a lot of room for improvement. Okay, so I'm using a couple different add-ons to capture some data to improve my DPS. On the left-hand side, you have combat metrics, which really tells me how often and frequent I'm keeping up my buffs. We're going to get to that. It's very important. On the right-hand side, you have FTC, Foundry Tactical Combat, which tells me how hard I'm hitting it and how much damage I'm doing. So you can see a couple different things. If we look at my buff tracker, you can see Major Prophecy's up, but what is not up 100% of the time? Major Expedition. What that's telling me is I'm not keeping Twisting Path and or Cripple up enough. Thus, Scathing Mage has a low proc rate of 75%. So you want to keep that above 80%, if not into the 90s. You can also see Minor Berserk fell off. Only a 70% rate on Minor Berserk, meaning I was losing 8% damage for almost 1/3 of the fight. That is not acceptable. A couple other buffs, Major Sorcery fell off, and that's because the medicinal use passive is broke right now in the game, so you would see more damage with that. You go down to my DPS on the right hand side, and you can see what my major source of damage was, Force Pulse. Now, I should have done a better job maintaining Blockade, Cripple, and Twisting Path, so those numbers may be a little skewed. And you can also see that Narayana's self-buff did 1300 DPS, so it's really, in my opinion, worth using. Now, your Parse can go up if you want to use Molag Kina and just go ham on your magic, but in a long duration fight, this will work. Consider that I will have a lot better sustain running those two buffs as well. So what we take out of this, if you're going to use combat metrics, is constantly look at your proc rates of Scathing Mage, your buffs, and that's how you use this to improve your DPS, is making sure that those important buffs aren't falling off. If they are, continue to practice, work at it, because that's the only way you're going to get better. Well, gang, that's the build video. We got a lot more to go. We got the Stamina Nightblade Poison build. We're working on that. We're working on the Magic Healer build, the battery. So we got that in the works. We've already taken care of the Magic Sorcerer. So we still have the good old Stamsork, Donald Crunk here. We took care of the Magic Nightblade. We got some Stam Templar stuff. Hillary Clinton, come on, that's funny. Monthly Meta Humper. We got our Sap Nightblade build to update. So I'm trying to get all these builds update at least one every other day, including the written guide. So thank you for sticking with me. It's really hard with a new baby, but I'm working my butt off because there's a lot of good information. Just one thing I want you to get out of this video, if anything, is that remember, it takes practice, and no one's perfect. There's always room for optimization and getting better. If someone tells you you suck at DPS, because believe me, I've told myself that I sucked at DPS when learning this, because I did. Just get better. Eat your humble pie. Ask people that are better than you what they're doing and how you can optimize your build. And practice. There is no test dummy right now, but you can still drag a friend into Bloodspawn and just beat on it endlessly to improve your DPS. Don't quit. Don't go home. Keep working at it. Everyone has something to work on, especially myself. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, share this video, and wish Baby D a happy 2-month birthday.